I do not believe that there is one way to lead, right? And I definitely don't believe that there's one way to measure success. And so but I do understand that when introverts are in settings where they're surrounded by a lot of extroverts, sometimes you feel the pressure to act that way, or to maybe downplay your introversion. And I did that a lot myself when I was starting out. I would say probably for the first 10, 15 years of my career, I did that. I did all of those things as well. Now I wear my introversion as a badge of honor. That's probably like the first thing I'll tell you if I'm interviewing or if I'm leading a team. I will literally say, I am an introvert, and here is what that means for me, and here is what that means for you.
Hello and welcome to episode 220 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we will air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. Leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and, of course, help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Dr. Nicole Bryan went from the block to the boardroom and is now a certified leadership career coach, organizational consultant, and psychotherapist with 25 plus years experience helping introvert women define their own success, lead with confidence, expertly navigate company politics, and secure their executive seat to maximize their income, influence, and impact. Dr. Nicole's clients and their results span several industries, including healthcare, technology, communications, financial services, consumer goods, and education. Dr. Nicole's world-class programs at the Change Doc LLC integrate psychology, key business principles, organizational behavior, and decades of real world experience as a corporate executive to empower introvert women to make a difference, lead bolder, and create positive change for themselves, their teams, and the world. All right. Well, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, Dr. Nicole Bryan. Dr. Nicole, it's so nice to have you on today.
It is so great to be here. And let me just say, the name of this podcast does my heart really, really good. Quiet and Strong. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's the whole
Yes.
point. And we're going to talk about how you're quiet and strong and help other people be quiet and strong. We're going to get into that. So
Perfect.
let's start with you. Tell us about yourself and your journey to the work you're doing now.
It's really interesting because when I look at the work that I do now, which is helping introverted women get into the executive level in large and small organizations and succeed once they get there, I've always, in some shape, form, or fashion, been doing that work, even though that might not have been, with my title or in my own business, et cetera. So for me, I came to the work, honestly, in the sense of seeing and being around other people like me. I am a introverted woman who had high aspirations for myself in my career. But very early on, I realized that there were other women, female, introverted, who didn't always have what I would call a voice in the work settings that I was in. So I noticed it for myself, but then I also noticed it for other people. And even before I had a business that solely helps that kind of demographic, I found myself like either mentoring other people other women who were in that demographic, or giving advice to other women who were in that demographic. And so that's what I mean by, in some shape, form, or fashion, I was always doing it. And then it grew into, when you're inside an organization and you're kind of giving that type of advice and counsel, you have some kind of leeway. But then when you're outside the organization, you have a lot more flexibility, maybe to kind of coach and counsel people. And that's what led to me making the decision to kind of set up my own business that specifically is dedicated to helping women, Black women, introverts, get into the executive level. When you think about just women first per se, we already know women are underrepresented in the senior leadership levels, executive levels of companies. And in my mind, helping more women get to that level, introverted, and honestly non-introverted, but introverted in particular, puts a whole nother dynamic to what kind of topics get discussed, how decisions get made at that level, and it all trickles down, not only into our workplaces, but into our homes as well. So that's kind of what has motivated me to keep serving that population.
Wonderful. And we're definitely going to talk about how you do that. So,
Yes.
but first, also, when did you figure out you were an introvert? Did you have to learn to embrace it? Tell us about that.
No, you know what? I knew that I was an introvert. I may not have known the label or the term, but I knew really young. So I was, and maybe some of your listeners can relate to this, I was that little girl who would be in my room. So 5, 6, 7, when everybody else was outside playing and, having a good time in the summer and, going over each other's houses. My preference was to be in my room, literally under my bed, because that was my favorite place in my room, with a book and a flashlight and reading, right? My mother used to be like, Nicole, go out. She used to have to push me out of the door and I would come right back inside. So I knew that I just didn't have that same desire to always be in groups or large groups or other people, et cetera. Like I enjoyed my company, even from when I was smaller, more than anybody else's company. And I loved it versus, other people who would be like clamoring to connect physically with others. So I knew then, and I'd say, you know, I guess, and as we all know, there are different types of introverts. And I think I would describe myself as a social introvert, meaning I am great. I'm fine. I love interacting. I love spending time with other people. It's just that my preference and my energy comes from when I'm by myself. So when I think about high school, junior high school, college, that same pattern of, you know, going out and spending a little time with other people and then spending maybe twice as long by myself and being able to kind of regenerate. That's always been the case. Even in my professional settings, even now in my professional settings, that is the way it is, which is, and I coach people on how to lead teams, how to build teams. But I always remember I am an introvert first, right? So it's that the pattern has always been there and it just plays out just in different settings.
Yeah. Do you remember when you were little having a great imagination?
God, I could imagine it. I think my still struggle with, like, I wouldn't call myself a creative person, at least not
Yeah.
in the traditional sense. But what I did was I would lose myself I would borrow other people's imagination. So I would lose myself in books, for example.
Yeah.
Like it would literally be my world as I am reading a novel or a book or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely an imagination.
Yeah.
Um, and you also we're going to talk about myths, but yeah, we like people. We just
Yeah.
need our time. Also, when we're with people, we might want to go deeper faster than an extrovert
Yes.
might, but we like
Yes.
people. So we definitely bust myths. Is there another myth about introversion that you want to bust?
You know what? The what comes to mind when you ask that question is, it's funny because I have a lot of, as I'm sure you do and others do who are listening, have a lot of extroverted friends. And what's interesting is people seem to, like, a lot of my friends now are saying, I never used to be introverted, but I feel like I'm leaning toward that now, right? And so the myth that comes to mind as I think about that is that there's box for introverts, box for extroverts. When the truth of the matter is that introversion and extroversion is on a spectrum, it's on a scale. As we know, any assessment that you might take, there's a like a line. You're either high on the introversion side or low on the extroversion side. So the myth that I would say is that there's one thing. Like you can be an individual who, depending on the situation or the environment that you're in, you might lean more heavily toward one your extroversion or introversion side. But I think we all have both inside of us. We have the tendencies to be introverted and the tendencies to be extroverted, but there may be different situations, different time periods of your life, et cetera, where you lean more heavily on one versus the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the important thing is what are your strengths that you can give to each of those situations? And so, what's a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
I think all my strengths are, honestly, I think my deep understanding of people, believe it or not, I mean, people, someone might be like, that's weird, but my deep understanding of people is a result, I personally believe, of my introversion. And I would say because of two reasons. One, when I am getting to know someone, I go deep. So I try to understand who they are versus maybe other individuals might just stick on the surface. Like I have very low patience, low tolerance for just kind of surface level getting connections. So that's one reason. And then the other is because I am an observer. And so when I think about my introverted colleagues, many of us have that kind of quality. Like because we're not taking up space talking, we are listening and we're watching and we're picking up information that other people are going to miss because they're so busy contributing verbally, let's just say.
Yeah, yeah, I think most introverts are keen observers and we're always thinking and processing. So even though we're not talking all the time, we are paying attention
Correct.
and
Yeah.
we're putting things together. We're also masters of reflection, so we're putting all those ideas together. And so it is a strength of ours to be an
Yeah.
observer and really get to know people. And it's again, so many myths we're busting here, but also the strengths. So tell us about the work that you're doing now.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, so one of the things that I do consulting work, generally human resources consulting work, and I also do coaching. And in coaching in particular, it is with the specific objective to get ambitious introverted women into the executive suite. So it might be the individual woman says, hey, you know what? I'm an introvert. I may be working in a space that doesn't know or appreciate or reward introverted behavior, but I already know that I want to get to the executive level. So those are the types of people that I help. Or it could be a company who wants to invest in someone that they already know is an introvert and they want to make sure that they get them a coach or some type of guide to help them be successful in their current role or future roles within the organization. I love it because it allows me to dispel another myth, which is that introverts are not great leaders, right? So it allows me to do that either working for the organization or working for the person, individual executive, potential executive. And what I enjoy about it is that it brings together kind of the individual like psychology of the person, right? But also helping them to navigate their organization without having to compromise their values or their traits as an introvert. So a lot of what I do is I help individuals figure out how to use their introvert strengths and superpowers, I call them, to be able to be an even better leader and be even more effective, regardless of the environment that they're in. Because many of us find that, I mean, we find that we are in a extroverted world and we have to kind of figure out how to navigate in an extroverted world. So in a company, it can be even more challenging, particularly when you're sitting around a leadership table and everybody around you either are extroverts or they are pretending to be extroverts. And so you as in particular, my clients are female, but you as a female leader, you're already in the minority. And if you're introverted female, that makes it even more challenging for you. So yeah, that's how I help people kind of be successful there.
Okay, we have a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Let's start with how do you help the person become self-aware of their introversion, their strengths, their needs? Where do you start with someone?
Yeah. So usually I will start with three things actually. One, I will use assessments, right? Because I have found, I don't know if you found this as well, but I have found that a lot of introverts, because we like data. Now, it doesn't have to be quantitative data, but we like information because we like to process it and get it. So as even when we have leaders who really know themselves, they love to see it in data form, right? To take an assessment or two and kind of get some new information, new quality. So that's one way in terms of bringing about self awareness. The other way, believe it or not, is to get input from those people around them. I feel like I know myself very, very well, but I can't see myself from somebody else's eyes. And so doing either 360s or doing kind of interviews with people who see them every day in their work setting to see what themes people are seeing, where's the common traits that other people see. I always uncover something that the individual leader themselves were not aware of. So that's the second way that I do it. And then the third is asking the leader themselves, what are your strengths? What's the feedback that you've consistently heard throughout your entire career, no matter where you are, what project you're working on? What are the same things you hear repeatedly from people that they appreciate about you? And then you put all that together and you kind of come up with a profile. But the best thing to me about that is that it's from inside out for the leader looking out, and then also outside in, other people around the leader kind of giving them that feedback.
Yeah. And so we definitely talk a lot about leadership on this show because
Yeah.
people say ridiculous things like introverts can't be leaders, which you and
I
I know
know, I
is
know.
ridiculous. Is ridiculous. It's just the success for the introverted leader might look different. They might take a different approach. So let's talk
Correct.
about that. Tell us what you think is a great leader, how that might differ from introverts and extroverts, how that
Yeah.
might differ for women.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I don't believe that I do not believe that there is one way to lead, right? And I definitely don't believe that there's one way to measure success. And so but I do understand that when introverts are in settings where they're surrounded by a lot of extroverts, sometimes you feel the pressure to act that way, or to maybe downplay your introversion. And I did that a lot myself when I was starting out. I would say probably for the first 10, 15 years of my career, I did that. I did all of those things as well. Now I wear my introversion as a badge of honor. That's probably like the first thing I'll tell you if I'm interviewing or if I'm leading a team. I will literally say, I am an introvert, and here is what that means for me, and here is what that means for you. But not everybody does that, and it does take some time to get to a position where you feel comfortable doing that. And so when I work with clients, the one of the things that I do want to make sure that they are, part of our work is getting them more comfortable. Part of our work is to figure out how we can leverage their natural tendencies to lead more effectively. So what could that look like? So for example, not every introvert, we talked about introverts and maybe one-on-one, they're very good in one-on-one settings. So what that would mean is if you're leading a large team, maybe you spend more of your time meeting one-on-one with your team members than having to kind of gather them all in a group, right? Maybe that's the way you do it. Or sometimes what I've found is a lot of introvert leaders like to lead from behind, meaning that they're still in charge, they're making the decisions, but they prefer to allow their direct reports or other people around them to be like the face and the voice of the team or the decision or the project, right? And that allows that the benefits of that is that it allows you to sit in your introversion very comfortably, but it also allows you to develop others and give other people opportunities to kind of shine versus you. If you were an extroverted leader, your natural tendency might be to be the one and only person kind of out front and visible to everyone. So those are kind of just a couple of examples of how it kind of shows up differently. The other thing I will say is, I know we hear this all the time because it's usually the first example someone will say about how they can tell someone's introverted. But in terms of like speaking up in meetings, right? When you're sitting around a table, you're having conversations, the group is making decisions. And if you're introverted, as you're processing information, you're not the first one to raise your hand. And what I will say is many introverted leaders, particularly those who want to get promoted to higher levels in the organization, they feel a kind of pressure to beat their extroverted counterpart in saying something and getting their idea out there. And what I do, though, is encourage people to not play that game because you're literally fighting against who you really are, which tires you out, makes you feel like a fraud. There's a lot of downsides to doing that. But figure out ways how you can get your ideas out there, how you can participate in the meeting without necessarily having to compete with other people. One way, for example, is you could be the questioner, right? So I'm always like, I don't have to have the original idea, but I can use my observation skills. I can use my kind of processing skills to kind of look for the holes in what's being said and then ask the good question, right? Like that, those types of ways where you are still people still see you as contributing to the conversation, but you don't have to beat the clock to be the first person to raise your hand. So it's those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what do you tell people about your leadership style? I thought that was fascinating and also
Oh yeah.
important. So how do you
Yeah.
describe that to someone new to you? Like,
Yeah.
here's how I work.
Yeah. So, and it's so interesting because I just did it. So I do it in multiple levels. Those who I report into, and then those who report into me. So with the people that I report into, I always think it's important to contract. And that sounds much more formal than it is. But when I say contract, I mean verbally state how you want to work with someone, what they can expect of you and what you can expect of them. And so anytime I'm starting a new role or anytime someone new is joining my team, I'm doing some type of contracting. And as part of the contracting, I will always call out my introversion. Like you might be able to see my race, you might be able to see my gender, but the introversion part, that's invisible to most people
Right.
until you actually call it out. So I will call that out and I will say, I am an introvert. And then I'll ask them, like, what do you think? What do you think you are? Are you an extrovert, introvert? And then we'll swap some stories about how we believe that is the case. But then I will quickly go into what it means for me, meaning that, okay, so what this means for me is when I come into work in the morning, I'm usually really quiet. It takes me, I got to ramp up right. So that means for me, 7 o'clock meetings, not good. Like I'll show up there, but I'm definitely not going to be able to participate and engage. What that also means for me is if I don't get my time before that, meaning if I don't work out before that and have my alone time, I'm really grumpy all day. So you'll see that. Like if you when I come in and I'm not my usual self, my team will say, you didn't work out today, right? Like, because I can tell that, and they're exactly right. So I will lay out these things that people will see, and so that they know it's not a shock, right? But then the same is true. I have to ask, as a leader, I have to ask them, again, whether it's my boss or whether it's someone who's on my team, I will say, what do I need to know about you? How does your extroversion or introversion play out on a day-to-day basis? So for example, I had a team member who was uber extroverted. I think I'm uber introverted. But he would say, I have to chit chat. I have to spend the first 5 minutes of my meeting socializing because that allows him to break the ice, and then we can go deep dive. And so we had to negotiate, like, I don't want to chit chat with you, but you need chit chatting. So let's kind of negotiate. We'll ask one or two questions, but it can't be 5 minutes because my introvert heart, I just want to go deep immediately. And so those are the things that kind of come out when you're able to own your whatever it is, introversion or extroverted. But when you're, for me, own my introversion and put it out there, like say, this is what it is, this is why it's that way. It just goes so much further to allow you to know how you need to work with each other and to deepen the relationship. And as we know, introverts love, we love to deepen the relationship. So it's benefited me being more transparent about being introverted.
Yeah, I related so much to what you're saying. And when we don't do that, people start telling themselves stories, you know?
Correct.
So
Yes.
I
Yes.
I am an early riser. I'm very productive first thing. But yeah, don't schedule a 7 a.m. meeting for me. I'm not ready for that.
Nope.
And somebody could say, "Oh, well, David doesn't like people because he needs, he's quiet in the morning." I'm like, "No, I'm getting some great work done and I'm getting ready for my
Exactly.
day." I love
Exactly.
interacting with people. If I didn't ever, it would be terrible. Like sometimes I'll have a day with no meetings and it's a long day. I
It
need to
is.
interact.
Yeah.
I need to have both. But
Yeah.
that first part, also often we need time to process, and we need to
Yeah.
not all the time, sometimes we come up with quick decisions, but sometimes, it's like, let me think about that. But
Yeah.
also, I think that would come into the conversation. It's like sometimes I'm going to need to prepare for things. Also, sometimes I'm going to need to think about things, we can talk about deadlines and that kind of thing. But yeah, I love
Yeah.
that you do that with people, whether they're your boss or on your team. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, David? So at the end of the day, people want your best, right? Like people want our best. Companies want our best, right? They want us to do whatever they've hired us to do in the best way that we possibly can. And so if a small adjustment by the other people that you're working with, or if, revealing this about yourself helps you to do the best, to show up your best, to deliver your best, to give your best, then I found that it hasn't been a big ask. But I do think that because that hasn't always been the norm, it takes people a little bit longer to kind of warm up to just wanting to be that transparent. But I have not met, it's not bad. I have not coached anyone who's actually taken that step, who's come back to me and said, I regret it, or it's a mistake, or I wish I hadn't had done it. So it's been working for myself and my clients for sure.
Yeah, too often we try to be something we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both know that our best self is our best. Our
Mm-hmm.
authentic self is who we should be.
Yeah.
So, what other advice do you have for leaders to get to know their teams so that they can bring out the best in their teams? And, whether they're an extrovert or introvert, whatever. And there's many other strengths besides that. We just talk a lot
Yeah.
about that on this show because there's a lot of misunderstanding, but there's so many strengths that people have that come to them naturally. So what advice do you have for leaders to really get to know their teams?
Yeah. So one of the things that we already talked about, you can do with your team. So if you as a leader, one of the things I would say is if you as a leader take some type of assessment and you find that it adds a lot to you and your understanding of yourself, et cetera, I would always encourage leaders to leverage that same assessment with their team members, right? Like if it's done good by you, it's likely going to do good by your team. So that's one way. The other thing I would say is, I'm kind of a sucker for this. Many people might not be, but I enjoy getting to know my team outside of the work that they currently do or outside of the role that they might be playing on my team. And so, but at the same time, I don't like spending a lot of time for small talk, right? So again, you got to find the balance.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do is when I do bring my team together, whether it's that's weekly or bi-weekly, I will always do some type of round robin, meaning going around the room and having some them share something about themselves that the other team members don't necessarily know, right? So some type of icebreaker. The beauty of that is everybody's getting to know each other a little better. And whether it's work related or not, it all translates to being knowing each other better and working better together. And it doesn't take a lot of time. Everybody just goes around, you hit it, and you move, right? And it could be any type of question. It could be what did you do this weekend? And everybody goes around the room and shares. You get to know, like if I took a hike, you got to know something about me that you didn't necessarily know, and we kind of use that going forward. So there's always opportunity. So in answering your question, I would say if you're a leader and you have a team, when you bring your team together, leverage the bringing together, not just for all business, but maybe take 2-3 minutes at the beginning or at the end of a meeting where people and ask a question where people can actually get to know each other better. All that is a part of relationship building. And as we know, business is about relationships, right? I don't care what, you could be making widgets or you can making wackets. It doesn't matter. Business is about relationships. So that's the second thing I would say for leaders in terms of getting to know their teams better. I do think that as a leader, one of our responsibilities is to understand the uniqueness of your individual team members. You might have someone who's really strong in data analytics and you have someone else who is not, right? But if they're not strong in data analytics, they have a strength. Your job is to figure out what that strength is and how you can leverage it for the greater good of the team and the company. I find that many of us leaders don't always do that. And we look at it in terms of our team members' responsibility to kind of say, this is my strength, or to just get their job and their responsibilities done. But I think that's a mutual responsibility. And so I think that that's another thing I would say to leaders, which is if you have a team member if you have a team member and you don't know what their strength is, you are likely underutilizing them. And so it is your responsibility to kind of help them figure out what their strength is, but for you to figure it out so you can use it to the best.
Yeah.
Those are the top thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we help people do that, they are going to do their best work. And they're also going to be the most fulfilled when you are
Yeah.
using your strengths most of the time. We
Yeah.
there's always going to be things that, we're not that
But you don't want to
we
do,
don't,
and you're not
yeah,
going to, yes,
but
exactly.
if we can use our strengths most of the time, that's where it's at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Dr. Nicole, you're also a fellow podcaster. So tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. I am. Thank you for asking. I am. And I will say that I haven't. you're way ahead of the game. I'm learning from you when it comes to podcasting. But I started my podcast maybe a little bit over a year ago. And it is by far my most favorite thing to do in my business. Now, I had dreamt about doing a podcast 10 years ago when podcasts were little things like it was right. Like I remember sitting and talking to my boss at the time about putting together a podcast and doing it jointly, right? And that was 10 years ago. But it's taken me this long to figure out what exactly I want to podcast about, to get the courage to actually do the podcast, right? To figure out how I would do it. But I absolutely love it. And I think I love it, David, because I'm introverted and literally I'm just speaking into a mic and I'm sharing my ideas, but I'm not having to, it doesn't require energy of me because I'm not in that moment engaging, right, with anyone or a group of people. But I mean, it just fills my soul. And I know that I'm reaching people, right? So as you know, we get to look at our stats. We get to see like where people are listening from, how many people are listening. And I've been able to see it grow over time. And it just gives me an opportunity to reach people and give people access to kind of the work that I'm doing without having to, coach them one-on-one essentially. And so I think I would say that it podcasting kind of uses my gifts and basically puts it out there for a broader world, people who are normally wouldn't be able to reach or be able to have a conversation with. I'm in their ear. So yeah, I can't say how much I love it enough, honestly.
Yeah, and another myth is people say that introverts don't have anything to say,
Oh
but
my gosh.
we're always thinking. So we have a lot to say.
All right.
It's just, we're gonna think and then share. And podcasting can be a really good tool for introverts because it allows us to share. And again, we like the one-on-one. So you and I are having a brilliant conversation one-on-one,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
many other people get to hear.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I think the people who say that we don't have anything to say, I think they might be a little upset, David, because we don't have anything maybe to say to them, right? So in all seriousness, I do think that when you're introverted, you're selective. You're selective about where you spend your time and where you spend your energy because you know that you need to conserve time and energy. And so yeah, people who say that are probably not the ones that we are selecting to give our time and energy to, which is fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't say the name of it. It's Leading Her Introverted Way podcast. What are the
Yes.
topics that you talk about?
So that podcast is all dedicated to helping introverted women get into the executive level and excel there. And so I will talk about topics at the intersection of leadership, female and being a female and being an introvert. So it can range from, what do you need to do? How can you leverage your introvert strengths to become an executive instead of hiding as an executive. So for example, my most recent podcast was about code switching. So it was about stop pretending to be an extrovert in an introvert world. How you can use the trick that I had mentioned earlier about using questions to kind of increase your visibility within a meeting or within your organization. That's another one. I talk about how you can identify sponsors and use sponsors to advance your career. If you're an introvert and you don't like, for example, talking about yourself and self-promoting, okay, fine. But if we need the visibility. So how can you be visible and be an introvert and still be able to move your career forward? And having a sponsor or multiple sponsors in an organization is a way to do that. I talk about also different leadership skills because it's not just about getting a promotion or moving up in your company. It's also about once you land that leadership position, you've got to perform. You've got to show up as a leader. So I talk about some of the things that you and I were talking about earlier about self-awareness as a leader, how to set up a strong team, how to navigate your organization's culture, how to make sure that your values are what is coming out on a day-to-day basis as a leader, right? How you need to know what the values of your company are, but you also need to know what your values are and how to basically not sell out, how to make sure you are showing up as your true self and still being able to deliver for the company. So those are the things that I talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're talking about helping someone rise to the executive level, how do you help someone build confidence when it's lacking? And not all introverts lack confidence, but for those
Yeah.
that do, how do you help them build that confidence to get to the executive level?
Yeah. And you're right. Not all introverts lack confidence, but many introverts don't demonstrate their confidence the way that maybe extroverts do, or, maybe the way their company might expect them to do so. And so so as a psychologist, I will always say that confidence is a lag. It lags. It's not a lead. And what I mean by that is confidence is what other people may see, behaviors that other people may see, and they will say that you are confident. But the truth is, the behaviors are a lagging indicator. How you think and how you feel as an individual has to come before the behaviors, how you act, right? And so it really all goes back to self-knowledge, self-awareness, and beliefs that your current skill set and the current traits that you have can, in fact, be your strengths and get you where you need to go. So, one of the things that I'm always talking to my clients about is you don't have to change. Yes, we all need to grow and learn and continuously educate ourselves. Yes. But in terms of changing who you are, you don't need to change who you are to reach your leadership career goals. You just need to reposition who you are, meaning you need to figure out how to leverage the strengths that the qualities that you currently have in order to move your career forward. So the confidence piece of it comes with understanding who you really are, what your strengths are, and believing that those things can help you get where you need to go. Once we close that gap, then and once we close that gap, then it's kind of smooth sailing from there. And in those conversations, David, there are plenty of times where someone will say, I wish I were more like X, right? But for me, it's not enough for you to say that. I want to understand why. Like, what do you think being more like X is going to get you? So if I, for example, many of my clients will come to me, and I'm the same way, by the way. Many of my clients will come to me and say, I'm not a good public speaker, right? Because introverts talking to a large room, da, da, da. Okay, totally get it. Then my immediate question, and they will say, I want to improve on that. My immediate question is, okay, what makes you think that you're not a public speaker? Right? Because they get nervous. And I was like, that's not saying you're not a good public speaker. Like you get nervous about it, but when you have spoken publicly, what feedback, what data, what information besides your feeling about it do you have to validate, to tell me that you are not a good public speaker? And many people don't have anything, right? It's how they feel about it. My work is to switch that. My work is to bring the reality in to support or contradict the belief that we have in our heads. And that's much easier said than done, but that's where the real work is. Because once you believe, then everybody else is going to believe. If you don't believe, no one else is going to believe.
Yeah, I love that. Well said. So
Yeah,
get to know your strengths and know that they're different, but that's a good thing.
yeah, absolutely. And don't allow the, I'll call it rhetoric, that is outside of us, or in the larger society, or even in your company, right? Don't allow the rhetoric to distort your own belief. Like, if you hear something, you see something, question it. Natural curiosity to ask, what is the truth? What is the data? What do I see and have? What's tangible that either contradicts or supports this? And once you do that, then you can get out of your own head, which we live. That's where I live. I live in my own head, but we can get out of our own head and, find the reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, just as you're saying, introverts can be amazing public speakers. We have whole
Yes.
episodes dedicated to that. So
Yes.
but you just got to understand your strengths.
Right. Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Dr. Nicole, this has been a wonderful conversation. It's gone by really fast. I could talk to you for hours. Is there anything else you
It's
want to
gone by fast.
discuss?
Oh. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, David,
No,
please.
is there anything else you want to discuss today?
No, I honestly, I don't always have an opportunity to speak to introverts, talk to other introverts and just kind of riff on all the great things that we are as introverts. So this has been a true honor and a true pleasure. And I appreciate you giving me the time.
Absolutely. And of course, where can people find out more about you and the great work you're doing, your podcast?
Yeah, so please, if you're listening and anything that I talked about today, it was of interest, please come and check out my podcast. Like I said, it's my passion. So I am at the Leading Her Introvert Way podcast. You can catch me there, or you can catch me. I hang out on LinkedIn most. So just Dr. Nicole Bryan, or you can look up the podcast. The podcast is there as well.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. I hope you take the time to explore other episodes and learn from other amazing guests. Remember, if you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there is now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the four-letter Myers-Briggs code. I'll add a link in the show notes. And I'd love to connect with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media for Quiet and Strong and much more. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. So many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.